Well, we're joined now to discuss all this by Sarah Kelly. She was sexually abused as a child and is now a campaigner for NAPAC, the National Association for People Abused in Childhood. The novelist Jake Arnot, who specialises in secret histories, and the Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg. And perhaps I could begin with you with the end of Katie Russell's report. The whole question of throwing into doubt virtually every institution in the country and the kind of almost air of hysteria now that's growing up, and you get a situation like that which confronted the Prime Minister today.
Well, I don't think it's particularly new that people have doubted institutions. The famous quotation, "Who guards the guards themselves," is one that comes to mind. And you always need to be thinking of what protections are there to prevent institutions from covering up, because actually it's in the nature of things that institutions will try to cover up wrongdoing, and you need an active and free press, I think, as the great antidote to that.
But an active and free press did not, in the end, bring enough of this to light, did it?
That's absolutely true. And it seems that more things have come to light with a lot of speculation on the internet, which has led to the press to picking it up more seriously.
I said that in writing you very much specialise in secret histories. But if one adds the word conspiracy, if one adds the word ring, paedophile ring, if one brings in sort of elements that were referred to in one of our reports to the Masons and the rest of it, does it not make it actually even harder to understand these things and investigate them?
I think it does, and I think, particularly as somebody who works with fiction, one is constantly being very wary of the conspiracy theory. And in fact, one has to sort of think much more of the theory of conspiracy. Umberto Eco said that those who see conspiracy are often the conspirators themselves, and I worry the notion that. You just have to look at the internet. It starts to become something that nobody can understand. And what we do need is to really try and engage sensibly and creatively as well, but with the clarity of what's going on.
But Sarah Kelly, in this horrible dark world to which you yourself were a victim, is what is happening now something which has at least light at the end of the tunnel for the victim, in the sense that, at last, for people who've lived with this for decades, things are coming out?
It's very positive that survivors are able to speak out at the moment. And with the Savile investigation, with what's happening in Wales, survivors have been empowered to speak out, and they are being heard in a way that they haven't been heard before.
And your organisation, for example, which after all deals with people who've been abused, have you noticed big change?
Absolutely huge change. Since the documentary went out 5 weeks ago now about Jimmy Savile, we've had almost 7,000 calls attempted to us and hundreds and hundreds of emails from survivors.
Including Savile victims?
Including Savile victims.
How many to you?
We've had about 30 victims who have talked about Savile. Mm-hmm. We've had people talking about institutional abuse, but we've had a lot of survivors talking about abuse within the families. Mm.
So, Jacob Rees-Mogg, now we arrive at what the authorities do, which is to set up a whole series of inquiries. 7, and then 2 at the BBC, that's 9. This is an awful lot of inquiries, and Britain's inquiry system has never been the speediest. That surely, in the end, pushes the thing into a sort of parking lot. And these victims, who've been briefly liberated by the prospect of redemption, are now saddled with long, long waits.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and there are 3 types of inquiry, aren't there? There are the ones that are used to avoid a political problem and put it in the long grass. There are the ones that can be even lengthier, like the Savile inquiry, which you mentioned earlier, which do right a great wrong at the end, but as you said, a lot of the people involved are dead. And the third type, the type the Victorians had, that led to major changes. And I think what we need is speedy police inquiries to bring people to justice, and a perhaps longer term, more Victorian style inquiry to see what we ought to be doing now.
Yeah, but you know, in asking for a police inquiry, or many police inquiries, the police themselves are part of the story.
Well, I'd actually like the police to do their job and get on investigating people who've been accused of things rather than long-winded inquiries. You can worry about who is at fault in failing to investigate later. What you want to do now is arrest people and charge them if they've committed crimes.
And now that, you know, the inquiry process goes on, the big worry is that the thing will kind of drift away and we'll start trying to recast the past as a different country. After we've had Rochdale, grooming, that is now.
Well, I think the fact is there has been big changes. I mean, to have a Conservative leader to talk about gay rights is quite a move. They certainly wouldn't have been talking that way 25 years ago, and that was part of the problem. I mean, unfortunately, we do have to go back and see that. I mean, earlier there was a lot of emphasis on the notion of sexual liberation being the problem. I think it was sexual repression. I think it was still a very sexually repressed country, and you know. I remember in the 80s, the Conservative Party were very keen on making sure there wasn't proper sexual education in schools with Section 28. And of course, there was lots, you know, then the Tory Party was one of the biggest closets in Europe.
Well, let me ask you then. I mean, are we looking at child abuse as something which happened in the past or something which is utterly constant?
This child abuse has been happening as far back. It's still happening today. It's being talked about a little bit more today than it has in previous years, but children are still at risk. Children are still being abused today.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, Sarah Kelly, Jake Arnot, thank you both very, very much.